Jamaica, make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out. Don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30.
The World Bank and Jamaica have recently signed agreements aimed at building out the green economy in Jamaica, building resilience in the economy, improving education outcomes, and alleviating poverty, along with providing much-needed relief for those who are in employment but for whatever reason find themselves out of a job. I'll speak with the World Bank's Human Development Director for the Latin American and Caribbean region to find out just what these agreements mean for you in your field of endeavor, what they mean for you as a Jamaican. That's the issue for Lead Story today on this Thursday. Let's start the show. Welcome to Lead Story on this Thursday. My name is George Davis. Before I introduce my guest, it is proper to set the scene for the discussion we are intending to have this evening. And I want to start at the point where Curlin Brown has prepared this report just describing what the World Bank and Jamaica have agreed in recent weeks.
The World Bank and the government of Jamaica recently signed a $20 million loan agreement as monetary support for the Jamaica Social Protection for increased resilience and opportunities. The loan agreement's conclusion will coincide with the 2030 target date for the achievement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The program is expected to benefit 280,425 people by increasing the service delivery of Jamaica's social welfare programs. Located in Washington, D.C., directly facing the International Monetary Fund, is the headquarters of 5 banks which come together to form the World Bank Group, often called the World Bank. Well, the World Bank finds its origins post-World War II with the main aims of reconstruction and development. Its mandate differs from the IMF, which is responsible for fiscal and monetary policy and assistance. The World Bank carries out its mandate through technical assistance, development loans to government, and grants to low-income and middle-income countries. Just 1 year after independence in 1963, Jamaica joined the World Bank and has since benefited from support in areas such as disaster recovery assistance, agriculture, education, health, climate resilience, and poverty reduction. The World Bank Director for the Caribbean says the recent partnership demonstrates the World Bank's commitment to protecting the most vulnerable in Jamaica, and it will feature funding the government's proposal for unemployment insurance.
When our team began preparing this project, the government's request to us was very, very clear. Support the government of Jamaica in addressing the fundamental gaps in the social protection system. And these gaps, as mentioned by Minister Clark, have been very clearly exposed during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we seek to jointly to increase the resilience to future shocks and improve the economic opportunities in a sustainable manner.
Thank you very much, Curlin. Well, to further set the scene, I want to just put on the table up front some of the areas in which the development will manifest, some of the areas that Jamaica has serious deficiencies in, and which the agreement with the World Bank is intended to build resilience in. You'll hear that word a lot where the World Bank's relationship with Jamaica is concerned. It's about building resilience. So if we talk about social protection, talking about the number of children in employment, the number of children in employment who are unpaid for family work, coverage of social protection and labor programs, and social contributions. There are serious deficits in that broad area of social protection. Then if we look at education and the gaps in education, we all know those gaps, especially in the post-COVID period where there was so much learning loss, not just in Jamaica, but throughout the LAC, the Latin American and Caribbean region. Literacy rates affected, primary school education and enrollment also affected, and you all know that Jamaica's literacy rate is is not as hot as it ought to be. The quality of education, so where education is available is one thing, but the quality of that education is also another thing. And of course, my guest is eminently placed to discuss these issues, a former education minister in his native Peru. We'll talk about poverty and inequality, and the prevalence of poverty in Jamaica is high. According to the latest study, of course, that poverty index would have been skewed by the difficulties people faced during the COVID period. There hasn't been a published measure since to gauge the real level of poverty in Jamaica. Then you have the issue of hunger. There are Jamaicans who are hungry. There's an army of Jamaicans, a small army you could say, who face hunger every day. It's not just here, it's right throughout the world. In the OECD countries, the issue is serious where hunger is concerned, homelessness and hunger. And of course, you can't talk about human development without talking about health and nutrition. And where Jamaica is on that scale, or those scales, is cause for concern. And that's why the World Bank's project is designed to help the government improve all those areas broadly. All right, my guest has been waiting patiently. He's Jaime Saavedra. He is the Regional Director for Human Development in Latin America and the Caribbean. The first place to start, Jaime, first of all, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Jamaica has long been a country in its time with a close relationship with the leading multilaterals. Yeah. You are one of the top multilaterals in the World Bank, the IMF being the other, where Jamaica has often gone to the IMF for balance of payment support. So that's where the bulk of the loans would have been directed in the past, and the World Bank would have been asked to lend money to deal with capital projects. I want to ask you, now Jamaica is in a position where it's not borrowing money to do those traditional things. It is getting into agreements to improve human development outcomes. And I just want to ask you your perspective on the changing nature of the relationship and the changing needs that the government says the people of Jamaica have.
So I think Jamaica is now in a moment of transition, right? So for a long period, a lot of the financing of the multilaterals and the IMF was in order to support the country in terms of the macro imbalances that it faced. I think there has been dramatic improvement during the last few years. So now the country, I think, is moving towards making sure that those improvements on the macro accounts start implying a change in what people feel, in what people fear in their pockets, in what people fear in terms of what's happening with education and health of their children. And the bank is honored to support the country on that path. Now, it doesn't mean that the bank has not been working with Jamaica on those issues, right? Since 2002. Right, the bank started helping Jamaica with the PATH program, the cash transfer program, in which Jamaica was an innovator together with Brazil, Chile, and Mexico in terms of designing programs in order to protect the people from entering into extreme poverty. And since then, we have had a long-standing relationship with the country in terms of supporting the shaping of their social policies. There has been intervention. I mean, between 2010 and 2018, we supported early child education as well. So yes, there has been a lot of joint work and has been a fruitful partnership. But then in this last moment, there was a period in which it was about macro support, but now we're going to the micro side of the equation, right? And supporting human development policies on issues regarding education, issues regarding social protection, and issues regarding health as well.
Yeah. So would you say, just to put a cap on the point, would you say that it, from the World Bank's perspective, it is a sign of a progressing Jamaican nation and state that while its appetite for support from the World Bank has not diminished, the areas in which it wants that support is changing? And
it's not only the areas, but it was like a few years ago, it was critical because of the resources, because of the dollars. Now, the bank is a bank, so it operates, I mean, together with its partners like countries, lending resources. But that lending, actually, the important thing is that it comes with technical assistance. So at the end of the day, that lending is to leverage the resources that the country itself is investing on education, is investing on social protection, and try to support the country so that those resources, right, can be spent in a more efficient way in order to improve well-being.
Yeah, you spoke of social protection, and let's zero in on that a bit, because you spoke of the help that the World Bank gave between 2010 2018 with building out the PATH program, the PATH infrastructure. That's a program of advancement through health and education. We call it PATH here in Jamaica. So with the PATH assistance and what the government has been able to do with the social safety net by year over year, increasing PATH outside of the rate of inflation. So in other words, if inflation is 5%, then the increase to PATH budget over budget is 7%. So in real terms, you have a 2 percentage point increase. Yeah, good. So with that, this aspect of unemployment insurance that the World Bank is helping the Jamaican government to integrate into the architecture. I just want to hear you on that.
So it's like I think we're moving up the ladder of development, right? In the sense that the country will continue having a program like PATH.
Yes.
But first of all, now PATH has to be a resilient project, the word that you were using before. Yes. That we need to make sure that a program like PATH can be expanded if there's a new crisis, right? If there's a hurricane or there's another pandemic, hopefully there won't be. But if that happens, then the country must have better information systems so that it can reach more people quickly, right? If the need is there, and maybe even increase the size of the transfer if the need is there. So that's one first thing, right? That system is now more resilient, and actually we're providing technical assistance to the country in order to make sure that happens. How do we change the framework of PATH in order to make it a more resilient instrument? But in addition to that, a program like PATH implies just fiscal resources. You just need money from the government in order to transfer to people. In addition to that, the country's adding another layer, which is an employment insurance, which is different because it's like people saving, right? Pool the resources, and if you enter into an unemployment moment, then you can cash in. So this project is about designing that framework and then started implementation of an employment insurance. It's like an additional layer, right, to a program like PATH. So I think that's a movement in the right direction. But there's a third element that maybe is less, how do I say, less sexy, right? In terms
that's
of
the way to say it.
Less sexy in terms of like what people would understand in terms of policies, but it's about improving information systems, right? Such that all the projects can work from one integrated single platform. And then I can know if George received a PATH transfer program, and if someone in his family is receiving an unemployment insurance, and what other services that same family is receiving, and then see who is falling through the cracks, who might not be receiving anything, and we need to worry about that person. That third area in which we are trying to integrate information platforms is something that is extremely important, and we don't see that in too many middle-income countries, right? So we see many countries that will have a cash transfer program, that will have a social assistance program, that will have an employment insurance program, and all those programs operate independently, and sometimes even in different ministries, and they don't talk to each other. They don't use the same information.
They operate as silos.
They operate like silos, exactly. A few countries are moving into integrating databases, right? And make sure that all the social programs are looking at the same data and build the same data sets. So there's progress in Chile, there's progress in Brazil, right? Which is great. But actually there's something that we need to move in all middle-income countries to operate that way. So it's great that Jamaica is taking those steps.
This last question before the break, Jaime. Some people say, based on the historic relationship between Jamaica and multilaterals, such as the World Bank, that one of the criticisms is the World Bank, through its technical assistance agents, take a stencil from somewhere else, or one that they've crafted in the policy room, and impose it upon Jamaica, which in doing it that way, it is doomed to fail because it doesn't take in the information, as you mentioned, on the ground in the country to build in that natural resilience and to give it the best chance to work. I ask you here in 2024, does the World Bank operate that way, and is it operating that way where this unemployment insurance and the Spiro agreement is concerned?
So Look, I've been in the other side of the table.
Yes, I know you have.
I've been a minister myself.
Yes.
And then I wouldn't never accept that the bank will come and say, oh, you need to do exactly this, and this is the template, and your program should be this way. No, it doesn't operate that way, right? What we do bring is good examples from other places.
Yes.
At the same time, you should not like reinvent the wheel all the time. So you don't copy anything, but you must inspire your designs in the successes and in the failures
Absolutely.
of other countries. On that we can help, right? But at the end of the day, it's always the country's decision.
Yes.
Right? We can support, we can provide technical assistance, we can bring examples, but at the end of the day, is the government who will decide this exotic structure
Yes.
of whole social policies.
Hear you on that. Talking about development critically. We talk about growth a lot, not talking a lot about development in Jamaica, but we're having that conversation now. I'm speaking with the World Bank's Regional Director for Human Development in the Latin American and Caribbean region, Jaime Saavedra. More from Jaime after these.
The time by Grace. Taste that moves you is
6:45.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
at a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Sunrise Fitness, brought to you by Your Plate and Nature Valley.
Yeah, new agreements struck between the World Bank and the government of Jamaica. The World Bank says it is intelligent to the human development needs in the country. And so it has structured some programs that it believes can advance Jamaica where healthcare is concerned, where poverty alleviation is concerned, where social protection is concerned, where education is concerned, and of course, where the issue of resilience, especially green technology, the development of green technology, and the focus on the green aspect of an economy. We are in serious times where climate change is concerned, and that's a part of every agreement that organizations like the World Bank seek to strike with host nations. I have Jaime Saavedra here. He's the Human Development Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean LAC for the World Bank Group. And as I was saying to you off camera, Jaime, Jamaicans over time are fixated on growth, and for a country that records such low growth year over year, it always fascinates me as an economic student from university that we keep fixating on growth at such low rates. And I say to myself, well, you hardly hear anything about development, which is why I was particularly pleased with the agreements struck between the World Bank and the government, because I'm looking at development issues. And I want to ask if countries like Jamaica, of a profile like Jamaica, are so hung up on growth that they don't invite the population into a conversation about development to drive the same thing, development.
So, well, growth is critical, right? Countries need to grow, and they need to grow faster than the 2% that you were mentioning.
Yes.
I mean, that's not enough,
No.
right? That's definitely not enough in order to improve welfare of people. But I think you're absolutely right when you say growth is not the main objective. The main objective at the end of the day is the well-being of people,
Yes.
right? And for that, what we need to ensure is that that growth translates into opportunities for all. That growth translates into freedom for all. Right, and freedom at the end of the day is for all individuals in the country to be able to pursue their own dreams, to pursue, the life of their choosing, and be whatever they want to be, not whatever they can be because they have just few opportunities.
Yes.
Right? So it's absolutely critical. Now that's something that actually we heard and we discussed yesterday with Minister Clark and a group of ministers when discussing the overall World Bank framework with Jamaica. That issue of equality of opportunities that gives freedom to everyone, that's the main objective.
Yeah.
For that you need growth?
Yes.
You need growth.
Yes.
But that's not enough.
Yes.
Right? Growth that does not translate into opportunities for everyone is not what the country wants.
Yeah. You know, on the issue of poverty, the Jamaican now in 2024 views poverty differently to how the Jamaican of decades ago used to view poverty. Back in the day, and I sound like something like an old man, no, but we're young men, I mean. Back in the day, people would say, well, if I don't have this and I don't have that and I can't afford this or can't afford that, then I am poor. Nowadays, people will have a two-income household, so the father and mother as figurehead will be working in the household. One of them may have a car, they may have internet, cable, they have electricity, they have running water, but they still consider themselves poor because relative to other people and how other people are doing, they say, I am poor. This then puts pressure on a government to help that family to rise to a status where they believe that they are no longer poor. And in that way, the issue of poverty starts to look differently, and the approach to addressing it has to be different from how it was tackled in the past.
So, of course, the standards of living in the world, fortunately, have improved dramatically.
Yes.
Right. So, when we talk about an absolute level of extreme poverty, the world has improved a lot during the last 20 years. Right. Despite all the problems that we face now globally, this is probably the best moment for a child to be born.
Yes.
Right? Obviously, the news, you're fixated in the wars that happen in one place and in the other, in crisis, of course, and that's a huge problem. But actually, we are much better than what we were before.
Yes.
Right? But still, I think it's absolutely valid that people say, well, no, what I have is not enough. It's completely valid that you say, I want to have a better standard of living for me and for my kids.
Yes.
That's absolutely essential.
Yes.
And actually, as societies, right, we need to aspire that.
Yes.
Right? And actually, there are many societies that are doing better than many middle-income countries like Jamaica or like my country, Peru.
Yes.
Right? There are still in our countries lots of inequality. Right? Lots of inequality of opportunity. There are people that are still facing hunger, and there are dramatic differences in terms of the opportunities that some people have in order to pursue a better life than others.
Yes.
So we need to change that.
Yes.
So the ambition is the right one,
yes.
right? We need to continue growing and to continue finding ways to give a better standard of living to people.
Yeah, I was taken aback, Jaime, reading the latest, I don't know how you say it, if you say PISA or PISA, the program, PISA assessment,
yes.
Looking at the education outcomes and boys versus girls, the way the performance of boys and girls on math, English, science, and some other engineering in OECD countries, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, relative to our region, Latin America and the Caribbean, and the disparity. I was alarmed by the disparity. So children in the OECD are doing significantly better than our children. And I'm just wondering, in this post-COVID period where governments are so challenged to streamline spending, to fund social protection, to fund security, to fund health, to deal with poverty and inequality, what is happening to education in this part of the region? Is there not enough money being spent, or is it that the money that's available is not being spent wisely?
Before going to how to improve, I want to dwell into the first part of your statement,
yes.
That it was about how serious is the learning crisis that we're living. Right, you were describing a few numbers, and you were saying I was alarmed.
Yes, I was.
My worry is that societies in Latin America and the Caribbean are not alarmed enough, right, by the magnitude of the learning crisis that we were living even before COVID hit.
Yes.
Now it's worse.
Yes.
Now it has been deepened,
yes.
right? And as you're right, the PISA results was a standardized assessment, so for about 70 countries in the world, and you just think of the data. For a typical middle-income country in this region, And actually, Jamaica is in the average.
Yes.
More than 50% of 15-year-olds cannot read with understanding.
That's shocking and saddening at the same time, yes.
65% do not have the minimum math skills that they need for their age, right? So those numbers are not a problem. Those numbers are a crisis, right? And actually, it's absolutely essential that as societies we understand that we are not giving our children those tools that they need to be free. Now, as we were saying before about, we have improved.
Yes.
Yes, we have improved. Most kids are in school.
Yes.
True. In primary education, basically all kids are in school.
Yes.
Great progress. But that's not enough, because they are in school and many of them are just not learning.
Yes.
Right? So this is a huge problem.
Right. And then the second part of my question was in terms of the spend. So I often say that governments throw a lot of money at education, but they're not hitting the target. And I'm saying the issue of inefficient spend has to be one of the problems crippling educational outcomes in this country, in this part of the world.
In this part of the world, it's half and a half, I would say. Depending on the country, in some cases it's more lack of spending, in other cases it's more inefficient spending, right? And the main challenge that we have is that there's not enough of a focus on learning, right? On collecting data and knowing what's the level of understanding and learning of each one of our students, right? Of not having data. The case of Jamaica, it's better because we do have data. So we know what's the level of each child. That's not the case in other countries. So that, I mean, we're in better shape in order to start looking for the solution, right? But then the other thing is where do I put the resources, right, in order to improve that situation so that more kids learn? And if you ask me what's the key issue in a sector, education, in which there are so many things that you need to do, right? You need to buy infrastructure, you need to buy computers, you need to buy textbooks, you need to buy
pay teachers.
Inputs. Exactly.
Yes.
Teachers.
Yes.
So if you ask me what is the main factor that defines the quality of the experience of a child in the classroom and of how much learning is happening in the classroom, is the teachers.
Excellent.
Is exactly that.
Yes.
Right? So that is the key issue. So is to invest well in the human factor.
Yeah, I don't have much time if we could sit here for another hour, but I have to ask. So where the World Bank is concerned and its agreements with Jamaica, how does it posture to assist with improving learning outcomes?
One of the operations that we signed last year, actually only, focused on secondary education and that we're presenting conversations in order to expand to primary education, focuses on several issues, but most important, focuses on issues of science and technology and math in secondary, and on teacher support and teachers training. Right? So that's the critical issue, to make sure two things. One is that teachers get the support that they need, right, in terms of the right coaching, which has to be much more practical in terms of how to improve their practice in the classroom. And second, that we make sure that all our teachers internalize that their job is actually not to teach. Their job is to make sure that each student learns, which is not the same.
Not the same.
It's not the same. If I teach, I just teach. It's your problem if you learn. No, my job, if I'm a teacher, is to make sure that those 30 kids, all of them, learn.
Yeah. And lastly, I can't have you here without asking you, CVM TV, the exclusive broadcast of the Copa America in this part of the world. Are Peru going to do well this year?
I hope. But let's see what happens. Hopefully Peru does well.